so you get the feel of what we work.
These are new. Somebody needs to explain to the family group what they're looking at.
Why don't you do it? You're the.
There you go, Chris.
What do we call this? T4?
This is T11.
Okay.
Reserve Universal Parachute as recovery bag.
I'm now going to brief you on the T11 parachute. Please pay attention. Pay attention whether it pleases you or not. This is the main. This is what you wear on your back that has the actual parachute inside. This is called a static line snap fastener. This is hooked to the cable inboard on the aircraft. And when you jump out the door, this 15-foot static line goes out behind you and it breaks the parachute tie-down bands here and pulls out the parachute. You then fall in an arc and your weight opens up the canopy itself, and then boop, it's there, it's open, you're underneath, you sit down or you swing it on the ground. And then you take this
That
off.
sounds really easy.
That's what.
And you hope it's there. It's,
Oh, okay.
There's some differences with this reserve versus the old reserve.
Yep.
So you might wanna,
This reserve is the new Army reserve. You'll know it's quite flat. When your parachute malfunctions and you're in deep kimchi and you've got about 2 nanoseconds to make a decision, you activate this parachute. It's in front of you. Like this. You go boom like that and it pops out and saves your life maybe. If it does pop out and it doesn't save your life, your buddy will take the parachute and use it as a blanket in the evening.
Now, sir, can you explain the difference between that reserve and the reserve
Yeah.
we had to sell?
Our reserve was a little bit different. It was about a third smaller, but
Yeah.
it went out quite a bit like that. And the ripcord was off to the side here. It was a handlebar, a horseshoe-shaped handlebar. And you pulled it out, and it was spring-loaded. The spring would throw it out. But it wouldn't work unless you took additional steps, which meant as soon as you popped it, you had to grab it and throw it either to the right or the left, depending on how you were turning, so that it would catch the wind. If you didn't do that, it wouldn't get out from underneath the parachute and there would be no air in it to hold. So you had to get it out beyond the width of the canopy in order to get the thing to activate. And it would pull out and provide you enough lift where you could land reasonably safely.
Sir, what was the difference between the reserve and the chute that we jumped in our day in World War II?
Okay, the question was, did y'all hear it? What's the difference between the World War II parachute? The World War II parachute was called a T4, and it was designed by the Switlick Parachute Company, basically as a safety measure for pilots in the 20s and the 30s. They hadn't really thought of mass tactical with airborne troops. But the parachute was the parachute, that's what was used. The big difference was
Did I
that
mess
the
up there?
jumper was the one that opened the parachute. He jumped out and his weight went forward, and his weight going down on the ground opened up the parachute, and the parachute would inflate before the static line was taut. What that meant was the guy was like a slingshot thrown against the straps like he's being put onto now. And then the canopy would open and then he would swing down. Very tough physical initial impact. And everybody that I talked to who used it at that time said they had to get super strapped down. Because if they didn't, it was kind
My
of
OCD
loose
is
and
going
come
nuts
off,
right now.
which you don't want to have happen. So the guys would all get on the plane like this because they were so tied up with the straps. Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir. The canopy and the way we jumped in our day, all the commands
Now,
were identical.
the difference between the T4 and what we had was called the
You got a retainer
T10,
in?
which was the first kind of what they call an expanding envelope. The parachute came out first, essentially, with you and your static line. And then what happened is tied to the back between the parachute and the actual frame of the parachute pack was a series of rubber bands and a static line type cloth. And what that did is it allowed a smooth opening, because you weren't opening it. Your weight overall was opening it, but in a sequenced manner with the parachute rubber bands and all going off, whack, 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 whack. We had like 30 of them in a row there. And then that went all the way out. And then when you finally arced down, it separated from the aircraft and you were on your own. But it gave a much softer opening shock than the old T4. This one is quite a bit different. This is what's called a square. And if you saw them jump, it is in fact a square. You visualize kind of this shape. And then it has on each corner a vent. And that vent is what stabilizes the parachute and gives it some degree of directionality. It's slower by 2 seconds. So instead of counting like we did, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4, and it's open, it's usually 6 to 8 seconds. So you're kind of flying through the air for a more extended period of time.
That's an aviator's kit bag.
You know, that's what you
This
use.
is the new one, this is the universal parachutist recovery bag. So it's got, like, when I started jumping T10s, when they all jumped, the aviator's kit bag, you hooked onto your reserve, and that made your backpack choking you the whole time. This one, once you get on the ground, flip it inside out, put your parachute in it, it's got a special pocket just for the reserve, and it's got built-in backpack straps.
So after you jump, your shoes opened up, you're on the ground, you're getting out of your harness, you put all that crap in that bag, you walk off.
Do it.
All right, and combat jump height in World War II, our day, and today.
World War II, it was supposed to be at 300 to 500 feet. Because remember now, this T4 parachute didn't open almost as soon as you got out of the airplane. And the idea was, of course, less time in the air, the less exposed you are to the bad guys. So they came up with kind of a minimum time necessary, which was usually about 500 feet. Anything higher than that was pretty risky. The problem was the pilots weren't all that well trained all the time. And some of them, like in D-Day, dropped guys at less than 300 feet. And they dropped some guys at like 3,000 feet. You know, which was grossly scattering and made a lot of issues.
Col Nightingale, how important is the jump master with regards to the overall safety of the jumper and the jump?
Hey, with all these
Say that again.
How
functions
important
rigged
is
in,
the jump
if this one
master
doesn't tighten
to
down,
the overall safety of the jumper and
Forgo
then
that.
conducting the jump?
Answer Mark's question. The jump master is the guy in the aircraft that's in charge of getting everybody out of the aircraft. He's called the jump master. And he will have at each of his 2 doors an assistant jump master who basically controls the movement. The key thing the jump master has to do is get the people ready to jump if it's sitting on an airplane for maybe umpteen hours. And now they gotta stand up and get out the door. There's a certain sequence that I'm gonna walk you through that will explain how the jump master does it. There are 2 lights that guides the jump master. One is a red light, which means 6 minutes before the drop. So he's got 6 minutes to go through all the jump commands and procedures. And then as soon as the green light goes on, everybody's out the door. That's time to jump. The key thing the jump master does, once he's get everybody in their gear, is sequencing them out the door. If they come too close together, they have a tendency to get tangled up with each other. So theoretically, it's a 1 second interval between jumpers. In truth, it's probably less than half of that. We're going to jump commands. Wait till he gets loaded up.
Can you explain the new
Oh,
weapons case?
yeah, so this is a Mossy, replaces the 1950s weapons case. So we're with 1950s getting a quick release that it was part of your air items. So if you got up down on the ground and packed your chute up and you forgot that was still on there, it's in the bottom of your bag and you go digging it out. This one incorporates it now, adjustable, so whether you're jumping a regular rifleman set with just your weapon, nods, and whatever else, all the way up to our machine gunners on 240 Bravos, they can jump one of those in here. There's 2 sizes to this as well. This is the regular size, there's the regular and the large, and it has a couple features for quick access for getting into them. So all you have is a zipper, everything is Velcroed in here as well, it's all closed up. Once you get on the ground, it's got a built-in spring release. You just pop this through, and then it opens up, you don't gotta mess with your zipper. Ladder waves to secure all your equipment. It's a lot nicer than the 1950s, I think. I've done both, and I definitely prefer this.
This rucksack's gonna weigh a lot more than you do.
This rucksack has
Welcome to it.
air and broken rings.
That's what he supposedly is gonna wear on his back once he jumps in.
So it's hanging off of you when you jump?
Yes.
And how much does it weigh?
Depends on the position you're in. Like if you're a regular rifleman, 30 to 60 pounds, depending on how long your operation is. If you're part of a machine gun team, like that could be well over 100 pounds.
Remember when we talked outside the mock unit, a lot of the FOs, a lot of their rucksacks were over 120, 130 pounds.
If you jump the radio back then, the radio itself weighed 25 pounds.
25-pound crate.
With one battery.
One battery.
One of the things important are these jump masters, is as a jumper, you're not going in and just putting on your equipment and hoping that you're gonna get on the airplane. These gentlemen, I mean, they go through 2 weeks of training, and it's really intense. And they inspect, as Colonel used to say, perfect is good enough. I mean, perfect is good enough in inspecting these jumpers and making sure that they have no issues.
Will you
Oh, yeah.
explain when you